Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
In 1947, in the Latvian capital of Riga, a Jewish boy was born who would grow up in the Soviet Union in an atmosphere pervaded by anti-Semitism. After his father was arrested during one of the waves of anti-Semitic persecutions that swept through the Soviet Union, the boy's mother died of heartbreak. In some way, however, that personal tragedy drew the young man into Jewish life. And at the age of 19, he founded an underground organization that struggled for Jewish rights, including the right to study Torah. 3 years later, at the age of 22, and after his attempts to obtain an exit visa were repeatedly refused by the Soviet government, he joined with 16 other Refuseniks in a daring attempt to hijack a plane. The hijacking failed. He was arrested, although he could have received the death penalty. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison in the gulag. 7 years later, another prisoner ended up in the gulag, perhaps the most well-known of all, Anatoly Sharansky. And the two prisoners would communicate with each other via the toilet bowl and radiator. Their struggle opened the first real cracks in the Iron Curtain, which of course will ultimately fall, eventually bringing about the mass exodus of Soviet Jewry and its dramatic six-figure aliyah to Israel. Upon his arrival in Israel in 1981, the young man studied at a number of yeshivot and received smicha as an Orthodox rabbi.
And a MA degree in Jewish history.
Well, talk about it. He then earned, tell me if I get it right, he then earned a master's degree in Jewish history from Touro College,
right,
and served in the IDF. And he has for more than 30 years been one of the most active and vocal voices and personalities on the Israeli scene, and has been an enormous force in Israeli life and in Jewish life worldwide. And by the way, I get to interview many people, I get to speak with many people, meet many people on L'Chaim here on Shalom TV. As I was becoming a Jew, an American Jew connected to world Jewry, I too was one of those who stood in front of the Soviet embassy in New York, was jailed with Glenn Richter and Avi Weiss, protesting that the Soviet Union should open the gates for my people who were enslaved there. I stood in the bitter, bitter cold 25 years ago as we're taping at that enormous, powerful, emotional rally on behalf of Soviet Jewry created by a great American senator, Scoop Jackson. We were all part of a movement that energized us, and it was because of the individuals who put their lives on the line, who gave of themselves in extraordinary passion, emotion, compassion, and Jewish and human dignity. It is an extraordinary honor for me personally to be sitting today with a true hero of Jewish life in the 20th and the 21st centuries. One of the most well-known of all the prisoners of Zion, Yosef Mendelevich. What a thrill for me, and it is such an honor that you would take time to join us on Shalom TV thank you so much for being who you are and for giving us a moment of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's only a million questions I want to ask you. I first want to talk a little bit about you, and then I want to talk about your perspective now on Israeli life and Jewish life worldwide. And you have this wonderful book, The Unbroken Spirit. I want to understand how you become you. What were your parents' names?
Moshe and Chaya.
Moshe and Chaya. You lived in Latvia.
Right.
Growing up, Yosef, did you grow up in a home with Jewish content?
With Jewish roots, but as a matter of fact, my father was a believer communist. When still in the 40s, in the 30s, Latvia was an independent state. He was a leader of a communist movement there in the underground and was in prison for his beliefs. For that time, communism was forbidden in Latvia. So I grew up in a mixed family. Indeed, my father was Jewish, and he learned in Cheder, and he would remember a lot from his studies, but he was an atheist. He had no connection to any tradition, and he felt that our goal is to mix with the Soviet Union and a Soviet nation, whatever. Later on, as you mentioned, that he was arrested.
Why?
He changed.
Why was he arrested?
As you told truly, there was a time when they looked for scapegoats to blame on all the economical hardships of Russian nation, and certainly they were Jewish.
He was arrested then because he was a Jew.
I would say so.
Okay, but it was not because he was a religious or observant
In
Jew.
no way. As I told, he was that time not a member of Communist Party, but still he believed that the communist approach is a true one and it's the way.
Your father studied in Cheder. Did you?
Never.
Never.
You know.
Okay. What's your mother's Jewish background?
My mother was a daughter of somebody very close to Rogachover. You know, my father and mother, by the way, are from Dvinsk. I was born in Riga, but they originally are coming from Dvinsk. That was a really Yiddish shtetl, even in the mid of the 20th century. And two big prominent rabbis, Reb Meir Simcha from Dvinsk and Rogachover, were there. So my Zayde was like Mishamesh of the Rogachover. My Zayde, Nechem Yosef, and I am called after my Zayde. Mm-hmm. But still, my mother was like my father, the same,
okay.
The same outlook.
So as you're growing up, and forgive me, do you have siblings, brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I have two sisters.
Two sisters. And where do you come?
I am the last one.
You're the youngest?
Youngest.
Okay. When you're growing up in your parents' home with your two sisters, there's no Shabbat.
No Shabbat, no holidays, nothing.
Nothing.
But Yiddish, you know.
They
Talking
spoke Yiddish.
Yeah, and
okay.
It is how I know Yiddish.
Okay. And my understanding, therefore, is, and by the way, the audience should know, you know, we not only do Shalom TV here, we do the Russian Television Network of America. There are Jews from the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, who work for the Russian Television Network, and I'm very close to them, and I've been doing this since 1991 and 92.
I'm glad to know that.
And one of the things that I have learned is the extent to which many Jews from the former Soviet Union had very little sense of Jewish Yiddishkeit, even though they knew they were Jewish. And it said that they were Jewish on their passport, but they did not have Jewish life. And one of the things I wanted to find out from you, when you read the biographies of you, it says that when your father was taken away, somehow you became more engaged in Jewish life. I want to know what drew you. What drew you as a young Jew living in Latvia? You're in the Soviet Union. Why do you move towards Jewishness?
You know, it's a whole process. It's not at once, step by step. And I can explain and bring each point of decision making to go to this true direction. But still, you know, never you can explain why finally it happened. So as a believer, I say it's hashgoch, as we say, provision.
Okay, I'm not.
For all other friends,
Yes.
didn't do
Yes,
my way.
yes.
So it's, you know, my.
Okay, but give me
A
one.
lot of things
give
happened.
me one. Give me one thing that you felt it's either drew you or pushed you.
See, just to underline the difference between me as a post-war generation of Soviet Jewry and between other Jews that were grown in Russian. You know, I was a fourth generation, and they normally were the second one. So I was not almost assimilated. Also, I was not a believer. I was not assimilated.
Mm-hmm.
I did know that I am Jewish. I was afraid and ashamed being Jewish, but I didn't know good that I am Jewish. And I had a Jewish background. So it is a difference. And it is why, for me, this kind of decision was much more easier for, say, my friends, even my family. Part of them were religious people. My aunt, Pesach Dvoira, was a religious one.
Mm-hmm. Was there an individual who influenced you?
It was my cousin, her son, Menachem Gordin, Dr. Menachem Gordin, that is 10 years older than me. And he began this pathway of Jewish youngsters in the 60s, in the 50s indeed, to go, to come closer to Jewish identity and to Israel and to Zionism. I was influenced by him, for he studied in Riga Medicine University and settled in our apartment. So he was a very influential. He was like an example for me. And then, as you mentioned, the rest of my father changed his approach to the Soviet Union and as well that of mine.
When he was arrested, was he taken away from the family?
Sure, he was in prison in a labor camp.
Did you ever see him again?
Yeah, I come to see him. He was released after a year, for he was found innocent, unguilty, but it took a hard year of imprisonment, of being divided, and now family broken. So it's a hard story, but you know, sometimes people learn the truth from a hard life experience.
You know, you have this gorgeous beard now. When you were in Riga, you had no beard.
Oh, you know, I was young.
And my point is, you had a different look about you. Had I known you when you were 19 years old and 20 years old, 21, what were you like? Were you a strong, confident, aggressive young man?
No, in no way. I'm not aggressive even now, and not that time. I was, how to say, a decisive person, resolute. If I make a decision, I follow the decision, but not in an aggressive way. I'm very liberal, very open, which enables me to be a rabbi. You know, when you are aggressive rabbi, it's a different kind. And I love everybody, and I understand everybody, but I have my own way.
In some way, what you did is beyond our imagination. We imagine that those who did what you did, who founded a movement of resistance in an environment of fear and persecution, it had to be something inside you of enormous courage. Were you aware of this when you began the resistance movement that you became part of?
You know, I'm not a strong personality. I'm a very soft man. And I never thought that what I am doing is dangerous or special. It was simply a way of life. I enjoyed it as so.
Mm-hmm. It's said, by the way, that you also argued for the right to study Torah. Is that true?
As a matter of fact, there was nobody, to how to say, to talk to with authorities about the issue. It is, it was would be in vain. I simply began. I would believe my first classes in Soviet Russia, underground, to teach Torah in like 1967, 1968.
When you say underground, what should we imagine? Where does this happen?
Oh, it happened in a synagogue, but it was, unofficial. And when we come, a small group of Jewish youngsters enter the synagogue, and I opened Chumash with Rashi and start teaching, older people come to see what we are reading. They felt that it is something, and they were astonished to find out that it's Chumash and Rashi.
Really?
Yeah. But they told it's forbidden, you're not supposed to teach others. It's like a religious, influence. It's penal, it is illegal.
Okay, and what did you say back?
I understood that I have to look for another place to do that.
And you did? You moved?
Yeah, we moved, but it was not for a longer time.
Uh-huh. And how does somebody without a Jewish education wind up teaching Torah?
It was, as I mentioned, in 1968, that time, I already managed to study by myself some 500 words and expression in Hebrew, and I could read, especially it was with Russian translation. It was sent over from abroad. I don't know exactly from England or from the States, a couple of sforim, a couple of books that, what is special in that I, myself, a student of university, saw possible to take the book, religious one, and I found interest in it, and I felt that it's very important to explain to others how it is, special, and there is a point of interest in it. But, I didn't have enough knowledge, of course, and my explanation and reading were very simple. But it was good for the beginning.
Yes.
And when I will tell you the story, if you have enough time,
please,
how I decided to be religious.
Tell me.
One day I decided that I have to go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs and ask for permission to leave to Israel. So I went to the office and asked why they refused, for we got already several refusals. And the man told me, see, it was 1968. You are a young man, and you study in university electronics. So you're very important for us. If we send you to Israel, you would be drafted immediately to Israel army. Israel is our enemy. We don't send educated people to our enemies. Better you stay here and you build communism, and you will die here and forget about your Israel. Go away. So I felt that I have to stop my studies in the university if I'm valuable from this point of view, and it may be an obstacle for me to go to Israel. I decided I would be better a simple worker without any profession, instead of being an electronic engineer with any expectation to go to Israel. So it was my decision. I stopped studying in the university, and at the point I was drafted to a Russian army. For as far as I studied this kind of profession, they expected me to finish my studies, and they would draft me and trying to be an officer. So when I got the draft, I understood that it was a bigger mistake. For now, in the Russian army, I'll will serve some 3 years or more, And then for certain they will not permit me, for they will declare that I have an approach to state secrets or whatever. So this day, this night that I had to go to the, as we say, whatever draft office or whatever, I felt that I have to do something about that. And I would go in my room to and through and thinking, and there was like an idea that I have to sacrifice something. What sacrifice, you know? A feeling if I sacrifice something, I can succeed in going away, getting free from the army. And all of a sudden I understood what it's about. I told to myself, Yosef, you are Zionist. You teach others go to Israel. What's the reason to go to Israel? To come back, to go back to your nation, to your roots. But what means Jewish roots? Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. If you are not going to be religious in Israel, there is no meaning to go to Israel. You can stay better here, like all other goyim. So I understood. I have to be religious, for I taught others. You know, I did know a lot in terms of that modern Russian Soviet Jew that time. My knowledge was different from all others. And I asked myself, why I didn't do it before? And my answer was that it is uncomfortable, you know. To be religious, it means to limit yourself, to be different from others. And I thought, it is a kind of sacrifice that you have to sacrifice. And I told, Ribbon Shel Olam, my God, I sacrifice my freedom to you, but you promised me that you got released from Russian army. So, and with this, agreement between me and the God, Ribbon Shel Olam, I went to the army office. It was the first interview. So the man opened my case, and he saw that I was already at the time on a fourth year of studies in university. And he asked me, what happened? Why did you stop your studies? You know, to tell him that it was the reason of going to Israel would make no good for me. So I looked around, and I saw a bird over the window on the tree. And I told the officer, see, the bird is free. He can go whatever he would like to, and I'm not free, you know. I born, finished my high school, entered university, I'll become an engineer, I will marry. It's like my pathway is already decided without I make any decision. So he told me, what, you would like to be a bird? And I told, certainly. So they sent me to a psychiatrical institution to, So I thought it's the God way. He's bringing me right to the needed direction. So I spent here like a month, and they decided that I'm really sane, but I am not able to serve in the army, and they released me from the army. So directly from this psychiatrical institution, I went, imagine where? To the synagogue. For I promised the God, if he released me from the army, I have to go to the synagogue. Okay, as I mentioned before, when I come to the synagogue, there were older people, afraid of everybody. And when a young man of 20 come up and say, teach me Judaism, they felt that I'm maybe a KGB agent, so say, we cannot teach you, it is forbidden, go home, and whatever. They didn't know that I am, crazy. Otherwise, it would be much more easier for them. Anyway, it is how it started, And I would like to underline the decision was, I would say, a political one. Zionism. Zionism brought me to a conclusion that if I am a true Zionist, I have to be religious. And it is how I became from the beginning. But of course, I have, as I told you, a history of my arrest of my father, being or becoming a Jewish fighter, whatever, which make this decision easier. And then my friends would ask me and tell me, Yosef, you indeed fast on Yom Kippur? I thought, yes. And you don't eat bread on Pesach? Yes. Oh, you are a modern person, you are intellectual, how you can do it? You are a fanatic, you know. I looked at me, I was not fanatic at all, but in their eyes, I was already a religious fanatic.
Bowie, how were you able to be an observant Jew in the former Soviet Union?
And, you know, it was for the beginning, and of course, it was more a decision than practice.
Yes.
But later on, when I was arrested, I had another experience that brought me even closer to not only to the decision, but even to the practice.
This is after the incident with the hijacking.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk for a moment about the hijacking. You know, on the one hand, you say to me, I was not a courageous person. I'm a soft person. You tried to hijack a plane, Yosef. Most people, Bowie, maybe you were insane. I mean,
oh, I'm saying I served in an IDF. I got a high profile.
I don't mean insane literally. What I mean is, it is fantastic that you, and the way the story is written, it was about 15, 16 other young people your age, decide you're going to hijack a plane and ultimately go to Israel.
Not to hijack.
What?
To take over.
Okay. What was the
to
plan?
use for a while.
Boy, in retrospect, as you look back, did you have any chance of succeeding?
You know, in terms of how to say, of doing it without the reason we were arrested because we were watched by KGB. If not, we could do it easily.
Can you tell me what the plan was?
The plan was, as a matter of fact, the main factor of our decision was that Mr. Mark Dimshitz, a former major of Soviet Air Forces, became a student on underground Ulpan in Leningrad. And when he saw young people there studying Hebrew, he told them, why are you studying Hebrew in Russia? You never could do it. Better do it in Israel. And they say, but we are not permitted to leave. As a Russian officer, you know, there is nothing, as they say, niet. You know, as, if you are not permitted, do it. So, and what is interesting, it is a real Russian approach, and it's okay with that. But what is interesting, he found soldiers, which I never, as I mentioned, served in the Russian army, but it was the same approach. And that time, it was 1969, we managed already to build a nationwide Zionist organization with chapters in Leningrad, in Moscow, in Riga, in Minsk. So, and I was that time the editor of underground journal. So I got correspondence from different places, and it is how this piece of knowledge came from Leningrad. And I was told that there is a Jewish pilot that is ready to take us to Israel. So I was only glad about that. Would you refuse, you know, this chance to go? So, you know, I mobilized some other friends that I was sure that they are my mind. You know, we had a lot of friends, but I know that there is a kind of personalities like me that, you know, don't like to think too much. You know, it's sometimes it is a benefit, you know. And when you first make a decision, and then you think. So it's how you become criminal, you know.
The others were roughly your age?
Yeah, say Dimshitz was much older than me. At that time, he was twice as old as me. And there was another guy in Hittis, Eduard Kuznetsov, that was at that time already 36. They were older than me, but I would say three of us were somehow the leaders of the group, and specifically taken in account that the regional initiative was that of the group in Leningrad. But later on, they give up their attempt for several reasons, and just to mention, they felt that it may be a provocation of KGB, and it may be staged just for the reason to crash upon all the underground movement that was that time more cultural than activist. And they felt that it may be for KGB a pretext to ruin all the movement that only that time started. So they asked, they understood that we in Riga are very stubborn and we are different kind of people than in Leningrad. So they asked us at least not to show it as a national Zionist activity, just of people that look for freedom. And using this pretext, Kuznetsov, that was an older and independent, invited two his Russian friends that he served the first term in the prison with them, our friends Fedorov and Mushenko. I was very unhappy with that, for I did felt that it should be just for the reason of struggling for freedom to go to Israel for all the Jews. So I wrote a declaration declaring our goals, that our only one goal is to bring freedom to our Jewish nation, to get free immigration from Soviet Union out to Israel, to any other place. And I made Kuznetsov sign this declaration with a purpose to send it over to abroad, to Israel, in case we would be killed or encountered or whatever, and we couldn't speak out. At least it would be an evidence of our right, true goals, why we did it.
Yosef, it did occur to you you could be killed.
Yeah, okay. You know, I am a soldier. Soldiers, soldiers strive for life and hope to be alive, but they understood they can be killed.
So while you were in the plans to hijack the plane, did you live in fear?
In no way. In excitement, in expectations that finally it will happen.
It was an adventure
I will do something for my nation.
But wait, is that true for you in general? In general, have you lived without fear and instead with excitement?
No, I have a long life of almost 65 years. I cannot tell you for sure that it was always, but normally it's.
Okay. And what you're telling me is somebody inside your group was a KGB agent?
No, I think that the very reason that on the first stage of preparation, more people in Leningrad were involved in it. So it leaked out, simply. Okay. And then they start follow us.
And how far along in the process do you get before you're arrested?
Well, we came up to the airplane with weapon.
Really?
Yeah.
And the airport was where?
In Leningrad, in the vicinity of Leningrad, Smolny Airport.
You came to Leningrad to do this?
Yeah.
From Riga?
From Riga.
I see. And just out of curiosity, what airline's plane were you going to take?
There was a good flight from Smolny Airport to a small place inside a forest close to a Finland border, which would enable us, instead of taking over the airplane in the air, struggling with the pilots, just to let them land, and when one of them would go to open the door, for it was a small one, only for 12 people, we would simply, explain him that he has to rest outside in the forest, for we have to take another flight, and then we should return the airplane and even to pay for gas. Yes, it is a Jewish way of doing it.
Did you have a pilot with you?
Yeah, sure. Dimshitz was with us. He was our commander.
Right. I see. Okay. All right. But you were arrested as you approached the plane.
Right. According to the scheme of KGB, for they would like to have us red-handed on the spot, and then to break us and make us to perform their performance, calling up Russian Jews to learn from our experience and stop any connection with Israel, Zionism, and be good Soviet citizens.
Okay.
And so far, it was their success.
At this point, it was their success, yes. But again, just help me, just visualize it. The moment when you're about you're either approaching the plane or about to board the plane, and all of a sudden there is the KGB, what did you feel?
okay, you know. I was ready for that. I will tell you in the story is in a book, so I will repeat it in short. It was announcement, boarding, flight number that and that. So we start going, all of us, for we bought tickets in beforehand, like tourists, and we pretended not knowing each other. But when the group was together, you know, you saw young men with backsacks. It was really like Israeli paratroop than tourists. Anyway, then I saw that they are looking at me, and I had a problem. I had a beret on my head.
A beret on your head?
Beret on my head. For I was religious, I had to cover.
Yes.
And they told me, see, it is June. Now it is hot. People don't wear berets at the time. It's, you know, looks very suspicious. Remove your hat. I thought, I am religious. I am not permitted. And then when I noticed that they are looking to me, I was angry. You know, in these situations, I have something against my religion, you know. And then I understood that the reason was different. They looked for the pilot. Looked and where is the pilot disappeared? He was not with us. So I am a leader. I make a decision to run away to look for a pilot, for I saw him coming to the airport with his family, with his wife and 2 daughters. And I figured that maybe he didn't listen to the broadcast, to the radio announcement. So I ran away from the field to look for Mr. Dimshitz, and I found him, indeed, with his wife and daughters. He had a guitar, and they had sandwiches. It was a last breakfast. Anyway, I was very angry with him, and I told Mark, we are already at the plane. What's with you? He told me there's something wrong. The boarding have to be started half a year later. Why they started it now?
Half an hour later.
I don't like it, he told me. So I answered, you know, it is not the Soviet army. Things change. Okay, he told, run back and say, friends, that I am joining. So he took his old belongings and started going. I ran back, you know, excited twice that I, Mendelevich, saved the whole operation. You know, unbelievable, you know, what a privilege. And when I entered this place, this airfield, I was thrown down, beaten, and handcuffed. So, and I, being on the ground with my nose in the beton, I understood that it's what we expected will happen. Okay, that's but when they took me up, I saw all my friends already arrested.
Including the pilot?
And the pilot, I heard shootings like boom, boom. I turned and I saw that they shot a Dimshitz, and there was a blood on his face. His wife cried. It was something terrible. It was a real tragedy. In fact, they hurt him with something in his forehead, so it was a lot of blood, but nothing happened with him. But it was, you know, something, you know, it was a point of tragedy, not my arrest.
Okay.
You know, who I am.
At this point, I want to know 2 things for context. Number 1, we often hear that for the Jews of the former Soviet Union, the Israeli victory in the Six-Day War had a major impact on how Jews in Russia and the Soviet Union viewed themselves and what their future should be. This is about 2 years before the incident.
Right.
To what extent, for you personally, did the Six-Day War victory in Israel affect you?
You know, it's rather difficult to tell you what kind of influence it did have on me. Just to mention that I established our underground student organization in 1966.
Yes, before.
Before.
Yes.
So somehow, certainly it influenced, but it was not the first motivation, you know. In fact, we have more reasons to be so decisive. For I was a patriot of Israel, and I felt myself very, very close to the idea of independence war and whatever. So I felt myself a soldier even before.
Okay, you knew about the War of Independence.
I knew everything. I was, that time, we had in our clandestine a lot of literature, so I was very well educated. What enabled me later to get the second degree in Jewish history.
Natan Sharansky often talks about the influence of the Six-Day War on him. It's not the same for you.
No, sure not.
Okay. And to what extent was any contact you had with American Jewry, did it have any positive effect on you at this point in the story?
See, there were two very important points in what we know about American Jewry. To begin with, we did know that the American Jewry is wealthy, influential, and they are brothers, so we could reckon upon them. But certainly the activity of IDL and Rabbi Meir Kahana was for us like a note that really we considered Rabbi Kahana as a representative of the whole Jewry, and for us, as much as they would mention only his name in the newspaper, for they were very angry with his behavior, so they would write it almost every day, which make us to feel very joyful. But not specifically his deeds. He was, again, as an expression of the whole community. So we did know that you, American Jews, do care about our situation.
You did know that. You did know that.
Out from what they would print in Pravda.
And were there American Jews whom you ever met?
Yeah, there were a group of two, I assume, or even three American students that come to see us in the end of the 60s in Riga. I even remember a name of one of them, Yuda Juravel, mentioned here in a book. They were religious boys, and I tried to find out who sent them. They never told me, but it was obviously a group that was sent on purpose, with a task, with specific task, just to find out what is going on and what we need, and I asked to try a way to send us more books, more information about Israel, about Judaism, whatever. And then I asked Mr. Juravel, you are Jewish and you are Zionist, why don't go to Israel? And he told me, you will never understand. When it is easy, it is very difficult. So he came to Israel some 20 years later after I arrived with all his family. And he visited in my apartment, and he remembered.
That's a lovely story. That's a lovely story. So again, what year are you arrested for the hijack?
1970. June
1970.
June 1970.
Okay, okay. And, you know, really the movement in America on behalf of Soviet Jewry is still in its infancy in 1970.
Right.
It gains much more.
But it started around the midst of the 60s.
That is correct.
So that of ours.
Okay, and it's interesting. You came here with a number of lovely people. One of them is Glenn Richter, who worked with the student struggle for Soviet Jewry back in the late 70s and has been
in the late 60s.
Even the late 60s.
Sure.
Okay, I did not know him till the 70s, and from an American perspective, he also is one of the heroes of this movement.
He is in my outlook as well.
A hero to you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And David Birnbaum and Jacob Birnbaum and all other friends, Avi Weiss, whatever.
Yes, remarkable people here in America.
Yeah,
who
good
moved,
Jews.
And they would not stop. And again, they're the ones who brought us in, because they were enormously moving in what they were trying to do and had extraordinary passion. And somebody who works with me here at Shalom TV, Alan Orich, was involved in the movement in very many ways, so that we saw, you know, the Glenn Richters, the Alan Oriches, the Avi Weisses as enormous heroes to us. Meir Kahana was also instrumental in raising consciousness. Unfortunately, within the American Jewish scene, he was not viewed by many as a hero, although I thought he was doing extraordinary
But
things.
I assume that now, from a historical perspective, everybody understands that he played a very important role.
Absolutely.
It may be controversial, but still it was very important.
Absolutely.
And for us specifically, for Russian Jews, it It
Yes.
was a symbol.
And, you know, for me, another person who's very involved with Shalom TV, who's a Jerusalem Post correspondent, is Izzy Liebler, who was in Australia at the time.
Izzy Liebler is not only a correspondent, he's
Yes.
a very wealthy man.
Yes, and not only that, he was a courageous man.
Right.
And he fought for the freedom of Jews from the former Soviet Union. So there were a lot of very good, brave people who gave of themselves and created a movement outside of the Soviet Union. And what I was asking you was, to what extent did you really, you know, here I am, a little pisher with Avi Weiss, and we're arrested in front of the Soviet embassy, but did it matter? Did it matter when I was taken away?
It did matter on the
matter?
Soviet government, not much on me. You know.
Right.
So we you know, self-decided. We didn't care on anybody.
Yes.
It was Israel, it was our goal, and it was our obligation.
Okay. Tell me about the trial. When you're on trial, what's your emotion, and what do you fear is going to happen?
You know, for some time I felt that we lost the battle, you know. It was a bitter feeling. And I didn't know whether it will be once publicized, whether somebody will know at all what happened. And then I was afraid of the way my friends would behave on the interrogation in the court. To put it softly, they do cooperate when interrogation. I don't blame it on them, but it's normal, you know, when you are in KGB. But I was afraid that they will behave according to what the authorities expected. They would stage a performance, blaming whatever. So it was Hanukkah time to begin with, and you know the Hanukkah is a time of miracles. And it was really a miracle of Hanukkah. You know, I know for certain that the government, the Soviet authorities never know that it is Hanukkah. But somehow, you know, they decided at the time of the trial on Hanukkah. And then they called up on Dimshit that has a lot to lose, you know. He, for certain, did know that he will get death. And then he has a wife and 2 daughters. And now the wife was in prison, and the daughter was in some prison for children, so, you know. So they expected that he will do his part. And all of a sudden, when he came up and I asked him, Dimshit, what's the reason you tried to run away from Soviet Russia? He told for the Soviet Russia and the Russians themselves, against Am Yisrael, I mean, against our nation. They tried to assimilate us. They deprived us from any possibility to be Jewish, you know. And more than that, they fight against our country, Israel. And it is not by any political ends that they claim that Israel is an imperialistic state. The only reason that the Soviet Union is against Israel, for it is a Jewish state and they are anti-Semites. So you know, the judge was, he didn't expect it. It was a real miracle.
Were you in the court at the time?
Yeah, sure. So
Dimshit was a hero.
He is a hero. He is a hero.
He is a hero.
Hero in Rehovot,
He lives
still
today?
young and strong.
No kidding.
Yeah,
You have to introduce me to him.
yeah. Come.
Okay, I will.
A strong Russian officer, straight, you know, and
Okay,
a leader.
By the way, that must have in some way encouraged you, emboldened you to hear him.
Sure. I was astonished. I never expected. And then they felt that their performance is falling down. So there was a woman, Silva Zalmanson, that they expected that he may be weak, maybe she will play the role. So they asked, no, you, Silva, what's the reason you tried to escape from our communist paradise? And she told, you know, we all Jews swear from the very beginning in the Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini. So the judge demanded translation.
If I forget Jerusalem, let my left hand fall off.
And when it was translated, you know, he understood that the game is lost altogether. Then they asked me finally, no, Yosef Mendelevich, they understood that nothing could be expected. Why is the reason you tried to run away? I said, see, the God, Ribbon Shalom, gave the promised land to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and I am their grandchild. It's my place there. Then another guy from this court come up and told, and when you ask Mendelevich, he's a religious fanatic, we are astonished to know that these men grow up in our vicinity. How it come about, he is not interested in anything except of his religion, his nation, his Torah. It was for me a biggest prize. This kind of.
Mazal tov.
I am so far I'm glad to be a religious fanatic, at least, my way.
What was the sentence? By the way, were you worried you would be sentenced to death?
No.
Okay. What was the sentence?
They give ruled
15 years.
To Dimshitz and Kuznetsov death.
Death?
Yeah, and they demanded death as well for me, but taking into account that I was the youngest one among all others, so I get 15, and 7, together
Yes.
15 years.
Concurrent, not consecutive.
So, it sounds good in English. Life sentence. Life, it's life. But there was death. So we were afraid about what will happen with the Dimshitz.
Now, what's so interesting is the sentence is changed after the verdict. Tell how that happens.
Yeah, I don't know in details, for I was inside and things happened outside. But anyway, some days after the verdict, and a KGB officer entered my cell like deep at night, like 11 o'clock at night, and told me, write, and so we say it in Russian, cassation, right? Just to, and demand to change the verdict. I told, okay, I need my lawyer. You have to say it is not exact true and it is not exact true. He told me there is no time for lawyers. Write it on the spot. So and he gave me a small piece of paper. So I write it like that. You accuse me that I betrayed my motherland and I worked against the regime, which is not true. My motherland is Israel, and I has nothing to do with Soviet regime. I simply would go to Israel, and it is a right of every human being in the world to be in the place he would like to. So I don't commit any crime, and the verdict is not just. He looked at it and he told me, it's the way, you ask to pardon you, whatever. I told I bring my lawyer. Okay, they didn't have a lawyer. They collected this kind of requirements from all other prisoners and flew directly to the Supreme Court in Russia. For that time, the pressure of the world jury was so strong on Kremlin that Brezhnev brought together his Politburo and told, what's the enormous outcry? Why the people, why the presidents call me and demand whatever? There was a head of Leningrad, department of the party, Tolstikov, the head of the party in Leningrad, and he told, we made something very brilliant. We found a group of Jews that would like to run away to Israel, and we arrested them. He told him, you are stupid, If you found the group, you have to just send them away, but you now brought us in troubles. So you are fired from your job. And we have to do something about that, for we need American technology, we need American grain, and everybody is calling from Italy and France, and so it is how they make a decision. I didn't know about that, but as a matter of fact, my sister, my oldest sister, Yeva, was one of the heroes, for she was in the room during the trial and the verdict. She flew directly to Moscow and met academic Sakharov, Andrei Sakharov, told him the story, and I was told that it was the first time that Sakharov was exposed to foreign press. He went directly to BBC, to whatever, and made a press conference with my sister, telling the truth of what happened in the court. So then the big movement, Let My People Go, started, and Russians were enough clever to understand that it is a very dangerous point for them. So they softened all the verdicts. And then a friend seated next to me in a cell knocked at the wall. That time I was already a year in the prison, so I was an old prisoner. I didn't know that just, we spoke through the walls. You take a mug and you spoke like a microphone and you listen from another side. It's beautiful, clear. So he told me, see, my brother come to see me, and he told that under the pressure of American Jewry, all the verdicts being softened. It's as a notice that I got, and I felt that it's a real victory of Am Yisrael over this big power. I told they are big power, but we are bigger, much more bigger.
The sentence is reduced from 15 years to 12. It's still a long time.
I figured that I will be, that time, 35.
Not too
enough
bad.
young.
Okay. What were the 11 years like? And again, I don't want you to take me through every year, but is there some overall impression that you can share with us? What is 11 years?
11 years. It's, it's a life, a whole life. And it's a good way of life, To begin with, when I came to the labor camp, it was a political one. So there were all kinds of groups. So like, it was independent as a Russian state on the way, There were Ukrainians fighting for their independence. There were Armenians, Lithuanians, and Russian movement to improve Soviet government, to make it human. They were Jewish, certainly. So it was like a club of most privileged personalities.
Was the prison of it that you were, in essence, isolated from the rest of Soviet life?
Certainly, yeah, sure. It was completely isolated, and more than that, we got a possibility to send one letter in 2 months, and normally wouldn't get an answer, for everything was, blacked out. Censored. Now, and we had no information, no radio, anything.
It was not physically brutal, though.
No, it was not that brutal. We had to work in the day and sleep at night.
And where were you?
It takes time, year after year, when you feel yourself finally broken, for you are humiliated. You're being, they deal with you with a dog, right? It is much more, a difficult experience for a human being to be underprivileged, considered like nobody, zero.
And where did you live? Was it in a cell or a barracks of some kind?
It was barracks for some 50, 70 prisoners together.
Okay.
But second point, what I mentioned, the first was a club of privileged people, special people. We were proud to be political prisoners, and with written on us, specifically dangerous. I was religious fanatic, specifically dangerous for them, and it was a privilege now. And the second point was that there were Jewish friends. So we established immediately our Zionist underground organization. And I became a rabbi. I started teaching them to keep mitzvot or whatever.
In the gulag?
In a gulag. To keep Sabbath, to keep kashrus, study Torah. So finally they discovered it. And they put me to a court and sentenced me to 3 years of specifically hard concentration, and sent to Vladimir prison for 3 years.
And that was a real prison?
It was a benefit to be there.
Why?
For there was no problem of keeping Sabbath, They didn't work on Sabbath. Vladimir at the time was schemed for very heavy criminals, like mafia, gangsters. So they were not supposed to walk out from their cells. And being in cells, they have no work for them. And then I have all kinds of benefits. I managed to smuggle inside the cell Bible, and a siddur, and a telescope. By the way, I brought a telescope here.
Yes, by the way, this here is a talit, a tallis, that Yosef made in prison, and you can see the tzitzit. Did you actually make the tzitzit in prison?
No, it is a long story, but I will tell you in a couple of words.
Yes,
My student of one prisoner that I educated to be a religious Jew, Rabbi Shimon Gerilus, now in Jerusalem, when being released, I told Shimon, I read in the book of Sholem Aleichem, it was the only one Soviet Jewish writer that was permitted to be published, that Jews has talis cotton. So when you're in Israel, send me one over. And he did it. So I was invited by the guards, and they told me, got a parcel for you, but we don't know what is that. So they showed me talis cotton, as you know, which I never saw. So I just figured that it should be something that I asked from Shimon. What is that? I told, it's like a national undershirt, you know.
Yes.
Your Scottish people has the skirt, and we have a national undershirt.
Yes. In case anybody doesn't understand, what Yosef is referring to is talit katan, or the arba kanfod, which a Jew puts under his clothing, under his shirt. It's a four-cornered garment, and there are four fringes, the same fringes you'd see on the four corners of a talit for a prayer shawl. And so what Yosef is saying was he had heard about the talit katan, the arba kanfod, and he wanted one, and evidently one was sent to you?
Yeah, from Israel.
So now you have one in jail?
No, it was immediately confiscated. They laughed and that it is a lie. We know it is a religious article. It's not, not permitted to have it. But when I was sentenced to this 3 years of imprisonment, I was sent, you know, they had trains, and they still have trains to transport the prisoners. When in the train, they give me all the confiscated belongings, except of money, weapons, whatever. But it was like something that cannot harm. They were afraid, and it's their practice to give belongings that they wouldn't be stolen on the way. It takes sometimes a month to go on the train. So when finally I got the talis cotton, I put on myself. I enjoyed it. But then I thought, then what will happen when in Vladimir they will again confiscate it? So what to do? It is permitted, and I assume it is still permitted, but it was at that time permitted to have a pair of woolen socks.
Woolen socks.
White. I had a pair of white woolen socks. So I looked at these tzitzis, and I told, it's the same color. So I just, you know, took it outside, the tzitzis out from the talis, and I pushed it in between the woolen threads of the socks. So it looked like, you know, in Alps they go with socks with such a, you know.
Yes.
So.
Okay. But did you knit this?
No.
Where is this from?
One moment. When I arrived to Vladimir, they searched me, and they asked me, where's your socks? So I showed it's my socks. Okay, no problem, you know. They never thought that it is something illegal, you know. When in the cell, I figured that it is not the way to keep a mitzvah of tzitzis. And then I thought of this scarf that I had.
You had this scarf?
Yeah. A friend of mine, before being released, left it over for me.
Okay.
So I told, it is wool, and it is wool. So I simply, you know, pushed it inside, put it under my uniform, and since then, I keep a mitzvah.
Okay. You wore this as an arba kanfod under your clothing?
For 5 years.
Is that why there's a hole here?
Yeah.
I see. So you would put this over you and underneath?
No, over my shoulders.
You would wear it more like a talit?
Right.
Like a talit? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And on it, my uniform. But as far as it is cold in the cell, it was normal that I have a scarf.
Okay. And they didn't understand what the tzitzit were?
No.
That's amazing. Where is this talit? You're carrying this talit to America. Where would one normally find this talit?
It is in a museum in Israel.
Yes. This talit is actually in the Israeli museum? Israel Museum?
Not Israeli. There is
one?
a Museum Judaica in King George Street and Heichal Shlomo.
Yes. So, but anybody visiting Israel can actually see
it's open,
this talit, although you're seeing
and it's my kippah as well there.
Your kippah as well?
And my prayer books that I wrote by myself.
I get chills just touching it. It's an amazing symbol And presence. Okay. So the other question
and
is...
it is a symbol that thanks me keeping Sabbath, being sentenced of keeping Sabbath, I got additional mitzvah.
Amazing.
And as we say, you know, in Pirkei Avot,
yes,
if
mitzvahs, yes, very good. Mitzvahs continue to grow mitzvahs. So listen, at some point Natan Sharansky, who's then Anatoly Sharansky,
right,
ends up in the same place you are.
Vladimir prison.
The Vladimir prison.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he sentenced there?
He was sentenced a year before. It was 1978 that we met,
okay.
And it was immediately after the verdict was passed.
Okay.
We followed, for it was in the newspapers, in Russian newspapers, they informed about the trial, whatever.
In some way, you say to me, you influenced him, yes?
He told me. It is what he told me when I managed to talk with him through the canalization,
How
through
did
the
you
pipes.
How did you talk? How did you communicate?
No,
with
it
him?
is, you know, it was the way all prisoners in Vladimir prison would talk one to another. You
How?
just pump out water from this bowl, and then, you know, you call somebody that you would like to talk to, and he answers. Sometimes not, sometimes it happens.
I see.
And then, Anatoly, yes, me. We spoke Hebrew. So
Ivrit,
he
really?
read,
Hebrew.
yeah. And he would mention in his book that I taught him Hebrew, which is not correct. He did know was a broken Hebrew. I improved, simply improved. Anyway, my first question is, how you began your activities? And he told me, when I heard that a group of young Jews were arrested in Leningrad in the airport, I told, people are ready to sacrifice their life for Israel. I am too sympathetic with Israel. It's a challenge for me to do something. And my first task was to help you out from the prison.
That's an amazing story.
Right.
The first time you ever met him really was in the prison?
Some 2 years later, by mistake, you know, it was some 50 degrees under zero, and we had the privilege in the prison to walk out for an hour of exercise, each cell in a specific cell outside. And mostly all other prisoners refused to go out, for it is very cold. And I did care on my house, for I would like to still to go to Israel to serve in the army, whatever. So I went to the exercise yard, and him too coming, and we all of a sudden we met. I never saw him, but each understands that it is him. So we embraced and kissed and immediately divided.
Okay, at one point you're going to be released. How does that happen?
My friends were released in 1979, and sought the agreement of nuclear disarmament with Soviet Union, like a gesture of goodwill, which was again thanks to American Jewry that put this clause in the agreement. I was not released. As Sharansky explained me, we were close in the exercise yard, so we could conversate, and I asked him why we are not released. He told me and him, or him and me, and Ida Nudel were in the second group. So like a big prize, you know, we were evaluated more. So if the Senate would confirm the agreement, we would be released too. As a matter of fact, it was a time when Russia invaded Afghanistan, and it is why the Senate didn't affirm. So I'm the victim of Afghanistan war. I served 2 years more. And all other prisoners told me, I mean, Russian guys told me, see, it is because you are religious. They don't release you. Stop being religious, you will release. You know, I didn't believe in that. And I did know what Anatoly told me, that the real reason is that the agreement was broken. So, but finally, as I was told, Mr. Edgar Bronfman, Edgar Bronfman, that time the head of World Jewish Congress, came to see Russian ambassador Dobrynin, and as people say, bought me for vodka, for Canadian vodka. So that time, I was on a prolonged hunger strike for some 60 days, demanding back to Ural Mountains after 73 years. They found my sforim, as we say, books, and confiscated. So I proclaimed a prolonged hunger strike, drinking water. For if you don't drink, you will die for a week. So I declared a prolonged hunger strike, and I managed, via Ukrainian friends, to pass the information to the Human Rights Committee in UN, where Ambassador Kampelman was at that time representative of the States. Starving from my hunger strike, I was not aware what is going on. I was ready really to die for Torah. And I was told later that when Mr. Kampelman, and it is my I thank him now, it's the possibility to thank him, when a Russian representative in UN come up to talk about violation of human rights of the Palestinian on the territory, as Mr. Kampelman told, what about you? You know, a Jewish guy is going to die for a Bible that you not permit. This is your human rights. So the Soviet ambassador ran to call Kremlin, and they told this is, you know, a Michiganer, and stop immediately. Kampelman, don't give me any possibility to talk about Palestinian. So on the 56th day of my hunger strike, the head of the prison camp walked in my punishment room, for it's a place they decided it's proper for a person that is on a hunger strike, and he told me, you are a dangerous enemy of Soviet regime. You are still fight against us. You know, imagine me lying there after, and this Russian guy, strong one, I was dangerous for me. He was afraid of me. So I thought, I have nothing against the Soviet regime. Just give me back my books, my forms, that's all. So we negotiate. He told it, he sent the majority of my books to check in Moscow, and he can give me at once. So, you know, I am kind of a politician. So we make a compromise. If he gave me back a part of books, and I stopped my hunger strike. Coming out from the punishment room, I was met with my Russian and Ukrainian friends that expected me being, you know, brought outside, maybe to the cemetery already. And they were astonished to see me with books alive. They asked me how it happened, how you did it. I told, it is not me. It's my American Jewish friends. And they told me, yes, we know. It is special about you Jewish people. You are together. It is your strength. And it's pity that they told, we are not that kind, you know. We know, among us, that it's not exactly true, but sometimes it works. And it is better to do that, to be united. It is very strong. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm. You experienced the power of the Jewish people being together. Yes?
Sure. And then, immediately after this hunger strike, I was taken to Moscow to headquarters of KGB. And I felt that they would search how I managed, being in Ural, to pass the knowledge in the Human Rights Committee. I thought, another case, another year, I get another 50 years of imprisonment, you know. I felt very bad about that. But not that bad, you know, as you know me. Anyway, after 2 weeks of expectation what will happen, I was called to interrogation. And there were 3 people seated, 2 major generals, and 1 in plain clothes. So I felt that it is, you know, they used to have troika, that the 3 people that would, you know, pass the verdict and kill you. So I looked what will happen. It was not really questioning. Then the plainclothes man come up, took a piece of paper and told me, I will read you out the declaration, the decision of Supreme Soviet of Soviet Union. And it runs like that. Because of bad behavior of this ugly man and this criminal, Mendelevich, we cancel his Russian citizenship. You don't deserve to be a Russian citizen, and we would send you away immediately. So I told, Baruch Hashem Baruch Shmo. He told, what you are saying? I told, I bless the God. It's, when a miracle happens, you have to bless on the spot. He told me, see how bad you are. When I told the same to Solzhenitsyn, he cried. And you are happy. I thought, what's a question, You did indeed send Solzhenitsyn out from his motherland. But me, you're sending to my motherland. So he thought, stop talking. We know you Jews know, you know how to talk. Just go down, have a shower, have a new dresses, and it is the dresses I got there. Put me on a black car and direct from the prison to Domodedovo airport and flown to Vienna and from Vienna to Israel.
Wow. I can't imagine what you must have felt when you realized you are realizing you're going to be free and you're going to Israel. I get chills just telling you. Do you remember what it was like?
Yeah, I remember. It was like, a soldier that accomplished his task. And the question was, then what? I have no goals anymore. I did it. I am now in Israel. My life finished.
By the way, the picture that's on the cover of this book, where's this taken?
It is an airport, in Lud Airport.
As you land in what is now Ben Gurion Airport, at that time it was called Lud Airport, right? What's the date?
It was, let me remember, February 18.
February 18th?
In terms of Jewish calendar, it was Purim.
Was it?
Purim Katan.
And which year?
1981.
1981, right, 1981.
11 years,
and,
70,
yes.
81.
And Sharansky won't come till 1986.
Six.
So you're freed first. By the way, did you also know?
But still I served 11 years and he 9.
Yes.
So I am a veteran.
Yes, you are. Did you also know Ida Nudell?
Just from letters that she would send me. And I did know that my father, in the very beginning of the struggle, in the 70s, instructed her that one of the way they communists used to fight against the regime was to take care on political prisoners, for it is somehow semi-legal. So she adopted this way. She would send parcels and letters, and the government, the authorities were angry with that, but they couldn't do anything. What is, simple thing to do.
And I want to come back. Were you ever close to losing hope?
I remember, indeed, when I was sent to this Vladimir prison, I stand at the window of the train, and I saw the forest, the trees, and the tree would wave me like, Shalom, you're going away. Like, the feeling that you're going to disappear. And I felt very uneasy with that. So I asked myself, what's the bad feeling that I have? For I am glad, I am privileged that I am serving for Torah and mitzvot and other terms. It's, it's a privilege. And I come to a conclusion that I am afraid to die. So I ask myself, what I can do about that? People like me cannot permit to be afraid of anything. We have to deal with that. So all of a sudden, I have a vision of a big tree, which is Am Yisrael, our nation. And I am a small leaf on it. And I thought to myself, indeed, Mendelevich is a very small leaf on the tree. But in fact, I am the tree itself, so I never can die. And this imagination give me a very powerful strength. I felt that I never can die. And it is how I overcome the fear.
Last question. We're about to see the 25th anniversary of the Jewish March on Washington on behalf of Soviet Jewry. You know, it's not like every Jew in America was there, but so many of us were there. And my daughter, who now works here at Shalom TV, was an infant 25 years ago, carried by my wife that cold, wintry day, but the sun shone. It was a glorious day.
I remember the day.
Were you there?
Yeah, sure. I was on the podium.
Yeah, it was just an extraordinary day. Wasn't it extraordinary?
Somehow.
At the same time, it was, in large measure, the result of the work of Henry Scoop Jackson. Not a Jew, who somehow made the freeing of the Soviet Jewish community a priority of his and linked it to legislation in the United States Senate. So I have you here. I'm asking you, speak for a moment about the event itself and what it meant 25 years ago and what Henry Scoop Jackson means to you.
To begin with, I heard about this project initiative of freedom to have this big event of 25 years of this, how to say, anniversary of our victory. And I am glad that there are still young people in America that remember and they understand that it was a real victory of us being together than, and to begin with, American nation. I thank Americans, simple Americans, their senators, their governors, their presidents, President Reagan, President, all other, President Carter, by the way, that were so supportive. You know, we are friends. We have to go to work together. And my feeling is, and it is not by chance that I devoted this book specifically to Senator Jackson. I met him when I was released. I met to see him, to come to see him in the Senate, and I thanked him. And I would use this interview to thank again the whole American nation for their passion to Am Israel, to the state of Israel. And let us work together for freedom of all the universe, of all the mankind.
You know, Yosef, there are sometimes you look forward to meeting somebody that you've read about, you heard about, who's been a hero of yours in the general, and you look forward to meeting them, and then when you meet them, you're disappointed. I want you to know, I'm not disappointed. You are fabulous. There's a neshama about you, a wisdom about you, and a kindness about you. It is an honor.
I'm a Jew.
No. It's an honor to have been able to sit with you. It's so gracious of you to give us so much time. You have already...
I give 11 years.
Yes,
So.
you have already given so much of you to the Jewish people, to Amacha. At the same time, permit me to say to you, I wish you still long, long life.
Thank you very much.
And I wish
Same to you.
Kol tuv v'hatzlacha in all you do. Family and the work you do. As long as you walk and talk and have those wonderful eyes and that delicious smile, you will move world Jewry.
Be'ezrat Hashem.
Be'ezrat Hashem. Toda rabah. Thank you so very, very much. I
you.
appreciate you very, very much. Love you very much. Thank you, Yosef.
Good.
Thank you. My meeting with Yosef Mendelevich. I'd love to hear anything you want to tell me about what it is to sit with somebody of this stature. Email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I want to hear what you have to say. My thanks to Glenn Richter, and in this case to Alan Orich as well, to Avi Weiss, to all those who made us, young American Jews, sensitive to a struggle. Elie Wiesel, too. We should have mentioned Elie Wiesel, who wrote, Jews of Silence before anybody was talking about it. To Izzy Liebler, who in Australia brought it to the United Nations before anybody else brought it to the United Nations. All these individuals deserve our eternal thanks. To Natan Sharansky, to Avital Sharansky, whom I met with during my honeymoon. She's the only person we would interrupt our honeymoon to interview her about Natan. Again, Anatoly at the time. And now you've met Yosef here. So be in touch with me. Let me know your thoughts. And again, if you want to be in touch with Yosef Mendelevich yourself, email me. I will forward your emails on to him. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM. To GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.